Alright y'all, you've been waiting too long for this one, but here we are with part 2 of my mega campaign. This is a continuation of Gosling's story beginning in CK3, so I'd recommend you watch that first if you haven't yet. Since it's been a while, here's a brief recap. The Gosling dynasty began in Venice in 1066 with Captain Ryan strolling around the Central European countryside, doing jobs for the nobility in the region. But when news that a crusade was being organized in Iberia reached his ears, he set off with his army to get a piece of that heathen land. The Gosling family was rewarded with the county of Lisboa, and from that city, the family spread its arms to grab control over most of Iberia and end the centuries of warfare that plagued the Iberian Peninsula. In 1444, the situation has changed. The century of peace between the Iberian kingdoms is at an end, and everyone wants to kill each other. The fate of the region remains uncertain, with no power having a clear advantage. This extends to most of Europe as well, with no big empires forming in the medieval ages. I guess you could argue the HRE, since although they lost some land in Europe, they more than make up with it with their gains in Africa. Also, I'm playing with some mods to limit the map painting and have the AI keep things interesting going into Victoria 3. Since Zenzir doesn't have content in EU4, I'm going to be skinwalking as Portugal by using their mission tree and ideas. The converter spit out the eastern side of my country as a personal union, so they're not going to be a part of my country for a long time. Fortunately, I can get a day 1 alliance with France, so I'm safe from any opening attacks. Unlike Aragon, who quickly got invaded by Castile. Castile did ally with Burgundy, and Wallachia is also allied to France, so I can't touch anyone here. I hate to say it, but the future of the British Isles is looking English because they already ran over Scotland. And Ireland ain't exactly powering up with heavy hitters. Like if Denmark is your best hope for victory, you might as well pack it up. You don't have a chance. Of all the religions to make a comeback here, how is it Hellenism? Centuries of Muslim and Christian thought reigning over these lands, and illiterate peasants are like, I think I miss my Zeus. I was tempted to convert Iberia to Hellenism for the meme, but there really is no content for it, so I'm gonna be a good Catholic and convert those lost souls back. Up in the far north, I was shocked to see that Sami was popping off here. You may think this land is all worthless, but actually, this is the most developed area in the Nordic countries. Kola is not only the largest city in this subcontinent, but is larger than Constantinople. I think the CK3 development may have ported over weirdly. There's nothing for me to do until I get exploration ideas. If I try to go north, I'll find an alliance chain that I have no chance of beating, and if I go south, that's the HRE. They're gonna humiliate me even more. All I can do is wait for my explorer to find me some new land. However, I do get an opportunity when I see France start its golden era. With their extra strength, I think we're gonna have what it takes to overcome Castile and her allies. The army strength is close, so with some good battles, I felt we could do it. But that's easier said than done, because the Castilians ran across the border to fight my army before I could get any backup, and the battle was not a pretty sight. I barely had a chance to recover before they were on me again, and I was sweating hard about getting stack wiped, but I managed to get away. However, all these victories were wearing them down, and with the help of some friends, we ejected the Castilians from Lisboa. I continued to crush the Castilian army, but then their allies started showing up and quickly became too much to handle. I couldn't even hold in the mountains, cause once I hit you with the third wave of troops, you gotta pack it up. Zenzir didn't have that many men, so I begged the merchants for money and got some mercenaries to regain the initiative. Too bad that initiative I gained was to get away from the battlefield. My ally Fez eventually got tired of the war and peaced out, but fortunately the Castilian alliance left me alone for a while to screw on France, giving me enough time to siege down Aragon. Castile's alliance was also losing interest, and I managed to get the English out of the war. This war was looking very winnable between me and France versus Burgundy and Castile, but I knew the French were close to quitting the war, so I tried to help them, only for them to peace out. It was looking rough, but not impossible for me to win. I just had to play the next year very smart, and I managed to chain together a bunch of good battles. First, I destroyed Rift's army in Gibraltar. Then I jumped on the Burgundian army landing near Valencia, making the sieging army on Aragon very vulnerable for me to kick out. After engaging another Burgundian army landing near Valencia, they were ready to tap out. Since I had a mission to secure the Straits of Gibraltar, I moved down to Africa and sieged down Rift to get Tangiers and Quetta. With them dealt with, it was finally down to killing Castile. But the Castilians were ready to make this as painful as possible when they took out a loan to buy mercs. I didn't want a nation ruin myself to win this war, so I decided enough was enough and gave what I could to my subject Alsarc. I'm not too upset over it because I was at the limit for my government capacity anyways, and with the responsible blobbing mod I'm playing with, it is a big deal to stay under that limit. I get increasing penalties as I get closer to 100% capacity and get a super punishing penalty if I go over it. So that means I will be a long time away from being able to integrate Alsarc, but at least I can feed them the last province of Aragon. Colonization is going great in Brazil in the meantime. With a foothold established, it was time to clear out the area so Zenzir wouldn't have any competition for the land. First, it was pretty quiet, with natives allowing me to peacefully occupy their land, but out of the fog of war, 24,000 native soldiers rushed to push me out. Now, I was a bit nervous because it's only 1489, the tech difference between us isn't that big, but I still bravely attacked their armies. They threw everything they had at me, and it wasn't enough. The natives in Brazil are just completely outmatched against my armies. We got some nice real estate in Brazil, and it was time to head back, but we couldn't go back to a peaceful home. Our ally Fez needed to defend their personal union over Marrakesh, but Marrakesh had gotten together quite the team to fight for them. Also, the timing for this couldn't be worse because I was in the middle of the ocean where my troops could easily get intercepted by the Bavarian fleet. It's so cursed that Bavaria kept this one province in Morocco because now they're a big player in North African politics. The war is sadly unwinnable for us since we are completely outmatched on the seas. The AI baited me into returning home to stop this small army and then block the Gibraltar Strait, so all I could do was watch the war score tick down, but at least I can continue colonizing. I did establish Zenzil, a self-governing colonial nation, so they could rapidly expand over that territory. I was gonna need money from them quickly since, as expected, we lost the war. And not only did Fez get fully annexed, they made me give a Rift back their land, so there goes Tangiers and Quetta. It was a tragic blow, and the only thing I have to cope with it is slavery. With Zenzil expanding fine on its own, I needed to rush to the Caribbean to establish myself. The French already had a head start on Hispaniola, so I needed to work on Cuba as soon as possible, before the Pope says this is all theirs. In typical EU4 fashion, despite me being the first European to establish a colonial nation, colonialism starts in France. All that conquering Native American land, and for what? Apparently we didn't learn anything from it. So since it's 1500, I figure it's about time to get a look around the world. The Irish sadly didn't make it. Rest in power, guys. The Danes couldn't save them, and it looks like they can't save themselves either. They're getting partitioned by England and Sweden. Other than that, we got the Reformation spreading in Central Europe, and somehow we got 2 centers in Croatia. I guess they really have a lot to say about the Pope there. Just like the Coptic community outside of Rome, I don't get how they're still there. They must be hiding like a nuclear bomb level scandal for them to still be tolerated there. In 1509, I made my own opportunity in Iberia by whispering in France's ear about Wallachia. Now, the sides looked even, and I felt safe to declare war on them. However, I neglected to realize that my lovely subject has their entire army on the Balearic Islands, and they don't have the fleet to bring them here, so I'm gonna have to pay for some extra backup. I should have been patient and waited for mercs to get their morale up, but instead I rushed ahead to save my capital and got my ass kicked. I am hemorrhaging money keeping up this large army, but this is what I needed to win. Their army is straight up better than mine, and I needed to re-siege my forts. The Caribbean colony was established, but not before the French got theirs running, so we're gonna have some problems in the future. The Yilikians do the super unfair tactic of also taking loans to buy mercs, and when they have equivalent numbers, I'm cooked. But sometimes, even overwhelming numbers aren't enough. I attacked them piecemeal, and I still end up losing. I couldn't take initiative. I had to wait for them to make mistakes to react to. But after doing that a few times, the war turned back into my favor. It took a lot out of me to beat them, and that's when the vultures started diving on them. I was so focused on ending this war, I neglected the noble rebels who occupied my capital. Their land was all very well developed, so I couldn't take much, and I desperately needed their money. After that war, Zenzor was not sitting in a good place. The money we took from them made up for a third of the debt we had, and inflation was becoming a problem. And to top all that off, the noble rebels enforced their demands, destroying my budget even more. It was going to be a long time before I can make any moves in Europe or Africa, so I just needed to focus on the Americas. I realized very quickly that self-governing colonies are pretty troll. They haven't even existed for 50 years, and Zanzil is so close to being disloyal. I had to take some extra debt to fix that before they became a problem. The United States made an extremely early appearance, and it seems to have been formed by Norway. I guess the Swedes didn't really give them a choice though. I'm sure Denmark would have loved that chance. Oh my god, they really massacred that country. Later on, Castile's main ally Burgundy got involved in a succession war, and since I had mostly recovered from the last war with the Yilikians, I was gonna jump on them again with France's help. With Castile's army away from home, I was able to get a free siege on them, but there was a Rift's army to the south besieging my fort. I went down there to attack them, and you'd think this would be an easy win with me defending in the mountains, but Rift did this weird thing where apparently they trained their troops, so they completely owned me in that battle. I guess the AI knew my army was bad because they just stood their ground and fought me, while when the French just came a bit too close, they were running for cover. Due to my low crownland, Alsark was having second thoughts about our relationship, and before I dealt with the issue, Morocco, like a redditor giving relationship advice, was already in their ear telling them they should leave me. They weren't the only one. Tahert also joined in, telling us to break up. Of course they weren't doing it because they cared about Alsark, they did it to get at me, because soon Morocco just declared war to take the last of my North African holdings. France wanted nothing to do with the war, so for a while, the North Africans were going to town on me. I tried to hire mercs to even our odds, but I'm gonna need way more advantages to beat the Moroccans. At least France was still on my side in the Castile War, so they were kind enough to liberate the Granada fort, actually trapping the North African armies in my land. With the French's help, I was able to pin their armies around Lisboa and overwhelm them. With nowhere safe to retreat to, they were soon wiped out. After the last of Castile's allies abandoned them, I could get a good peace deal. I didn't want to get a super coalition after this war, so I only took 4 provinces and money. Now I had to win the other war, but fighting against the Moroccans, Algerians, and Bavarians was not going to be easy. Fortunately, the Moroccans made a horrible move by sending its main fleet and army to siege the Balearic Islands, giving me an opportunity to cross to North Africa. Once there, I turned the war around, sieging down Fez and destroying the small armies they left in the area. The Algerians got tired and wanted out after a devastating defeat. The Moroccan alliance did return to Europe, and we're just left in an awkward position where we're just sieging each other's lands instead of fighting. However, I finished sieging Morocco first before they could get anything important on me, so once Bavaria taps out, I have really good standing against Morocco. Aggressive expansion limits me a lot since these are all good Catholics here. I make them return some land to their neighbors, of course took their money, but I did take Garb so I can bring an old friend back. These 2 wars took a lot out of me, so I need to relax and, look around the world. The United States is going hard on this expansion, swallowing up the East Coast and Canada, but there's a lot of competition here. The Zenhamas are really surprising me with their development. We got a major city in the middle of Cuba that's already comparable to other famous cities in Europe. I've taken a break on American colonization to go to South Africa and reach Indian Ocean trade. Meanwhile, in Scandinavia, Finland is popping off against Sweden. They're actually forming a decent power base over there. With my governance capacity expanding through tech, I finally have the room to integrate Alsark. In 1567, the League War started, and I stayed out of it because in the middle of that chaos, I had the opportunity to get some rightful land back from Rif and give my boy Fez back land too. They really went to town developing these provinces, and while I appreciate their hard work making my land better, it'd be better off in Lisboa. The Zorm AI mod is definitely working because I'm looking around the world and I'm seeing metropolises springing up in the most unexpected places. The Evangelical Union ended up winning the League War, by the way. I am getting tired of the mediocre rulers the game is throwing at me, so I started disinheriting heirs. But apparently in medieval Europe, that is what they call not a good look. So my prestige is in the toilet, and Alsark was once again thinking of breaking up with me. And of course, all the vultures around wasted no time encouraging them. I didn't want to wait around for them to declare an independence war, so I got proactive and declared a trade war against Guinea. That was their main backer, and with them dealt with, I could develop some loyalty into them, with the extra bonus of me getting a bunch more trade from Africa. And you know what that means? More slavery. America has really popped off these last 50 years. With most of Canada and the East Coast, it looks like they're about to dominate this continent once they push the other Europeans out. Nicaea looks like they're finally making moves. I see them in Greece and North Africa. Hopefully that means the Byzantine Empire will be back any year now. Scandinavia is still anyone's game. Finland and Sweden are the main fighters, but the Sami have a lot going on, so they could pop off too. After Alsark's annexation, I got a team together. France and I did make up, and this was gonna be a big war. And hopefully I could permanently cripple the Moroccans and Castilians, while also, most importantly, finally kicking the Bavarians out of North Africa, cause this area should be none of their business. The war doesn't start off great. I fight a large army in Morocco, but the morale they have is too much to beat, but my better quality does show in the casualties. When I catch the Moroccan army again in a much worse spot, it goes way better for me. But just when I think my army is pretty good, the Burgundians are there to bring me back to reality. Their army is so good, they force the French out of the war, and when I think we're gonna be in for a tough fight, the Moroccan AI actually unconditionally surrendered, which just shocked me. I didn't know the AI actually uses that feature. This wasn't that great for me because now I can't really take any land from Castile. I did what I wanted to do to Morocco. I fed Fez good. This did put a strain on my relations with France, which are holding on by a thread at this point. Despite these issues, I managed to keep France on my side because they kept calling me into wars against the natives in Peru. I wouldn't do anything in those wars, of course, but I gave the French moral support, and that was enough for them. You may be wondering why I waited till 1669 to finally declare war on Castile to form Spain, and well, you see, I tried to take some Congolese land for trade power, and they put up a lot more of a fight than expected. Castile is at least a non-problem, military-wise. Their only help is the Burgundian army. At least France can be a good ally and take a beating from them while I siege Castile down. I'm not a completely awful ally though, and try to offer some help to the French, but the Burgundians make me quickly regret trying to be the good person. Unsurprisingly, France ditched me, but I could narrow down their alliance too. Eventually, it was down to Castile and Burgundy. Burgundy was happy to get out of the war, but they were going to have to give something up for that. Their resistance was effectively broken at the Battle of Valladolid. I fought a small Burgundian army and they rushed to reinforce the area. While the morale outclassed me, the discipline and number of my troops would prevail. None of these guys would escape. 50,000 men gone, and all the Castilians could do was watch and accept my very fair peace treaty. But for the French, we'd gone too far now. Their jealousy of my greatness broke the last thread holding our friendship together. At least I can finally become Spain now and enjoy their content instead of skinwalking Portugal. It wasn't just me popping off though. Zenhamas had decided, since I hadn't bothered with Mexico, that they'd do it themselves. I also wanted to expand my trade empire in Africa by cracking open the Zanzibar node. It's funny how they had some big hitters as their allies, yet when it came to the war, none of them showed up to help Kilwa. We fought over the course of 8 years, and I don't think I even saw an allied ship show up. With friends like these, you really don't need enemies, do ya? Come 1700, the United States really fell off. They lost land to the Native Americans and even the Icelanders. Zenhamas is fighting the good fight to expand into Mexico. And who needs France when you got Finland, who are definitely gonna dominate Scandinavia? Hell, they're even dominating the Baltics and Russia. I still don't get how Nicaea hasn't gotten Constantinople yet. They've been kind of a nothing burger all game, and it's disappointing me. Also, I've gone ahead and taken over Australia. The English are trying to get their foot in that door, but it doesn't seem to be going very well for them. Also, despite my trade empire having a wider reach than the British, the English Channel is still worth more than Sevilla, and I can't let that stand. This is a long time coming, but now that I have the nationalism CB, I can take all of Castile's land in Iberia. And since it's the end of the game, I might as well use my golden era. But for some reason, despite Spain being led by a competent king that has brought on a time of prosperity with more money in the country than I know what to do with, certain enlightened people are saying this actually sucks. So the revolution is born in Lisboa. This revolution is so cursed because even though I'm letting the rebels siege my country, the disaster still can't fire. Things are going too well still in Spain. I'm pretty sure I could have just stayed a monarchy and just eaten the revolution penalties, but you know, this is what the people want, they'll get it. And to be fair, looking at all the buffs you get for embracing the revolution, it's hard to resist. The Spanish army is a monster, at the low cost of completely geopolitically isolating myself. I can make up for it by becoming the naval hegemon, which makes me even stronger and is desperately needed to keep my colonial nations in line. I gotta flex this army on someone, so Wallachia and France are my first targets since I will be uniting Iberia soon. The French tried to cross the border and quickly regretted it. They didn't do themselves any favors fighting me in the mountains, but I wasn't expecting them to melt against me like that. The casualty ratio after that battle is so funny. If this was real, you'd just surrender out of shame. I didn't want to fight every nation in Europe, so I only took Navarra from France and of course full annex Wallachia. This kept the coalition somewhat manageable. I felt confident after seeing how the way my army performed in that war, so I wanted to take a crack at Guinea. If I got their coastline here, I would control most of the trade in West Africa and easily make Sevilla the richest node in the world. However, when I landed on their coast with an army, I was quickly humbled. They can put up numbers, and of course, I don't have a tech advantage because this is late game EU4 where everyone has every institution because screw history. Guinea tried to push me out of my holdings in Angola, but when I'm able to put up similar numbers with my army, the quality difference really shines. I had military access through Congo, so I could walk up the coastline into Guinea. The Africans fought very hard to stop me. I lost a lot of men in battles, and especially through attrition. But after 8 years of fighting and draining my entire manpower pool, I got Guinea to give me what I wanted. I'm honestly surprised nobody else declared war on me during this time. My army was super weak, but I guess with my over 90,000 gold reserve, that was a good enough deterrent. I'm sad to report that America is definitely not making it to Victoria 3. The natives took back a lot of their land and the British are finishing them off. Any gains Britain made in the Americas would quickly be undone because we've reached that point where colonial nations are like,
oh, that's it. I've had it with this dump!
For example, I backed up British Columbia's independence, so they would join Haiti and Peru, who had already broken away from France, as free nations. Somehow Peru was able to sneak in an invasion of Zenzil without getting me involved, which really sucked because they took a lot of land off of them. I had another war with Castile to take their remaining colonies around the world, and I left them in Brittany to get finished off by France. I did have one last war with the French to take the remaining provinces in Iberia, along with Argentina, and this was the start of a very bad 5 years for them, because they were attacked by me along with Burgundy and Angria. The last war I'm fighting this game is gonna be against Peru. They're not getting away with taking all this land from Zenzil. Not so fun when you're the smaller guy getting beaten up on, huh? Hopefully, this will teach them to leave my empire alone because I'm okay with these borders. After that, I let the game run till 1804 so all the AIs could finish their wars, and this is where we're gonna end things in EU4. The US is gone, eaten up by the British and natives. Ottawa really popped off here. They drove all the Europeans back. Only Newfoundland and the 13 colonies stayed with the British though. Louisiana got its independence and started eating British Mexico, and some of my colonies too, annoyingly enough. But of all the Europeans to stick around in the Americas, who was betting on Iceland being one of the last men standing? Africa ends with Guinea domination of the west and Ethiopian domination of the east. Zamor in the south has a really funny story. They started as one of the Catholic Moroccan princes in the HRE, but they were kicked out by Mahdia, who was swallowing up all the Berber lands in the last 40 years, so they were exiled here. The Finns are primed to pop off in Victoria 3. They have a solid power base up here. I'm gonna be watching their career with great interest. Unlike Nicaea, they didn't do anything. They've even lost land to Bulgaria, who I guess is gonna be the one to dominate this region. The Ming stayed strong the entire game, and Asia was pretty much left alone. The only presence I have is some colonies in the Spice Islands, which I barely tapped for trade. Almost all my trade money came from Africa and the Americas. Eastern Orthodoxy still holds on in Nicaea. Protestantism didn't spread much in Europe beyond the HRE, but the Native Americans really liked it. Culture map mode has some funny stories to tell. You can see those Moroccan exiles in South Africa, along with an enclave of Protestant Berbers in Brabant. I don't know how that happened. Norman culture is still all the rage in Constantinople, and then you look at the cultures in the New World and it's scrambled. Although the Scandinavians got mostly pushed out, except the Chad Icelanders, they're the most present culture there, right beside the English. Spain's journey will continue in Victoria 3. I am definitely going to be adjusting some borders around the world because I know some of these nations won't convert well, and I want the AI to be able to do stuff. If you guys made it to this point of the video, thank you for watching. I put a lot of time into this one. Let me know what nations you're interested in me monitoring in Victoria 3 because I'm probably going to be chilling on the expansion. Make sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoyed so other people can see this video too. And if you want to go the extra mile to support high effort content, consider joining my alumni on Patreon so I continue spending a lot of time giving y'all great videos. I promise y'all won't have to wait as long for the next two parts because Victoria 3 and Hoi 4 are way faster to record. That's all for me now. Hope to see y'all again for those videos. Bye bye.